Hey, Kiara, welcome to the His and Her Money Show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here because, man, you have been destroying some major debt, and we are all excited to hear about the journey that you recently have accomplished. But before we start talking about what you've been through and what you've done, can you just say hello to everybody that's tuned into the show and let them know what you are all about?
Hi, everybody. Again, I'm Kiara. I am just a person that was sick of being in debt. And so I've been working with my friends, with my family, of course, working on myself and wanting people to live a life of freedom. So that's how I got to where I am. And that's how I'm trying to get everybody else to.
All right, love it. So let's talk about that debt. You were once drowning in it, and now you're not. So let everybody know about the debt that you had. So tell us, how much was it, the type of debt it was, and how long it took you to get rid of it.
Okay. So my story is a little bit different. It's pretty crazy. October of 2018, I had $62,000 in student loan debt. And November of 2018, I actually settled a lawsuit. So I'm going to run it back a little bit. No, was it July of 2016? I was on vacation with my family. I got a text message that said, "We don't need you to come back in tomorrow." I'd never gotten in trouble, never missed a day of work, never had anything bad. Clients loved me, and I got fired just out the blue. And so ended up filing a claim with the EEOC. They rejected it, gave me the right to sue. And so for 2 years, I fought this case and we ended up settling. So that gave me a nice chunk of change to actually pay some of my student loans off. And in addition to the money from the lawsuit, I saved really, really well. So I always set aside 10% of my paycheck every single month, no matter what, whether I was working full time, unemployed, underemployed, I always set aside 10%. So I had a pretty sizable savings account. Since July of 2016, I have either been underemployed, unemployed, working projects and contracts, and just living. And so October 2018, I decided, okay, I'm ready to pay off this debt. Didn't know when the lawsuit was going to end, but I knew I had to do something. So I paid off my first student loan. It was like $13,000, private loan with Sally Mae. So I took this huge chunk of money out of my savings account and killed it. Like, okay, we're done with this loan. The end of November comes and we settle this lawsuit. I get a check in like December and I'm starting to calculate like, okay, what can I pay off? How can I get it done? Because I paid off my car years before. So that I no credit card debt, no medical debt, just these student loans. And so throughout 2019, I'm just sending chunks of money to Sally Mae every single month. And I'm thinking, whew, this is hard. But I got it done. So in November of 2019, I made my last payment. I actually ended up draining my savings account because the money from the lawsuit had run out already. And it was either continue paying on this loan, which they had set up new payment terms and they wanted, I think, $400 a month for the next 3 years to be completely done, or I could drain my savings account and pay it off. So I did that. November 7th, I became officially debt free. And now I'm just trying to help people. Like I had a plan. I had a plan to become debt free before I got fired. I had an 8-year plan or five. It was 8-year plan in total, but it was going to be done in 5 because I wanted to make it a lot faster. But it ended up happening in a little over a year, thanks to an unfortunate event.
So let's rewind because you said even before the situation with your job, you had a plan. What made you come up with a plan? What made you say, Because a lot of people have student loans. Most people have student loans and they just figure it as just a part of life. It's just what everybody has to go through. It's part of being an adult. But for you, you didn't want to wait the 10, 15, 20 years that most people take to pay off the student loans. You said, I got a plan that I'm going to do it in 8. And if I work real hard, I'm going to do it in 5. Where did that come from?
So I had been paying on my student loans since November of 2007. I graduated undergrad, a very prestigious university in 2007. And I had under $40,000 in student loans, and I'm paying $775 a month in student loans, and it wasn't doing anything. And so finally in 2014, I got tired. I was like, okay, I've been paying all this money and the balance just keeps going up. I need to develop a plan that is going to get this done. And so just being tired of owing people money, I figured this way: I borrowed the money. It got me through school. I need to pay it off. And I know a lot of my friends and family don't think that way, but it was the only debt that I had. I had a plan to pay off my car. I don't have credit card debt. I have a couple credit cards now, but I always have a plan and I like to stick to it. So just being sick and tired of seeing that balance grow did it for me.
So talk about how you crafted your plan, because a lot of people are trying to figure out, like, what steps do I need to take? How can I create a plan? So even that 8-year / hopefully 5-year plan that you created, can you walk us through how you figured, like, how did you come up with 8 years, potentially 5? Talk us through that process.
Okay, so I wrote down the interest rates on my loans. I ended up consolidating the public loans because that private loan you cannot consolidate, and it had a variable APR, and I think at the time it was 11 or 13% interest. So my goal was to get that paid off in a year, and I looked at what I made. So I'm not gonna lie, I have definitely been underemployed for a very long time, and I didn't want to turn, I think my goal was 38. So I'll be 35 in a month and a half, but I didn't want to turn 38 with all of this debt. And so I figured, okay, this is how much I make every single month. This is what I can afford to give towards my loans. And I also live at home. So that is a big sacrifice that I've had to make. And so I don't live home rent free, but I definitely pay less than most people for a very comfortable living. I'm not going to lie. And so every single month, it's like, okay, well, I've got my car note, I've got insurance, I've got health insurance, I've got some extra spending cash because I like to go out to eat, or I have my in my feelings cash because if I'm having a bad day, I'm going to go shopping. And I would take all that, look at those numbers and see how much extra I could put towards my student loans. And so I figured if I did the snowball method, got that smaller student loan paid off, which was the private one, and start to take that $400 a month and add it to one of the 2 public loans until I can get those paid off as well. So the snowball method was the best for me because it worked with the smallest balance, but it had the largest interest rate.
Oh, so would have been the one that you started with, no matter which method you would have tried.
Yes.
Okay. Now, a lot of people, because you talked about consolidation, so some people have student loans and they have questioned within themselves: should I refi? Should I consolidate? Or should I just stick with what's already in front of me? Talk us through how you figured whatever calculations you came up with to say, you know what, I think consolidation would be a better way for me to get this done.
So I talked to a couple different friends who had consolidated their loans, and then I called Navient, Sally Mae, whoever she is this week. And I was blessed to get some really good people on the phone. And so these reps from Sally Mae would just sit and talk to me about how much I could save by consolidating and the time frame, and just taking that time. Like, hey, I use you guys as a resource to get these student loans. I need to know how I can pay it off. And so just talking to them and coming up with plans worked in my favor. Like, there were some days where I'd be on the phone with Sally Mae for 20 and 30 minutes, but developing that plan was great. And so even with consolidating my loans, I learned at the very end that I should not have been able to pay them the way I was, because even in the consolidation, I paid the smaller one off first, but there's ways around it. I would call them get a supervisor and tell them how I wanted a payment processed. And most people don't do that, because if you don't call them, they're going to split the payment up and not even do it equally. They're going to split it up how they would with what you're paying a month. And so talking to supervisors every week, like, hey, I'm making this payment. I want it to go to this loan, but not to this loan. And the next one will go to this one. And just working it, making sure that everything was documented. If they gave me a number that would go with my payment, I'd write it down and I'd call and reference it a few days later when I saw the payment being applied, or if it wasn't applied the way that I wanted it to, I can call and say, well, I talked to this supervisor on this day at this time, and they told me this would be done. Let's make it work. And so just doing my due diligence every single month helped a lot.
Okay. So let's go to phone call number 1, where you put the consolidation in place. What does someone have to ask for when they call to make sure that they get it done properly? Because you said, it took you a long phone call, multiple phone calls. So if you had to do it today, if you had to start over and you were in someone else's shoes, what advice would you give them on how to navigate calling their loan providers and asking for consolidation options?
I would, one, say have everything in front of you. If you have it sent emails, or if you get paper mail, have all those loans out in front of you. That way you can talk them through everything that you want to do, figure out the plan that's best for you. They have amazing resources. I'm not going to lie. There's the interest rate calculator. There's the payment date calculator. There's so many different resources on Sallie Mae's website that most of us don't utilize, that you just kind of have to sit and play with. So when calling in, the first thing I would say is be patient, because these people are getting yelled at every day, all day. And a lot of them have student loans themselves. So they're sitting on both ends of the phone. But being patient, having all your documents in order, and knowing that they are really trying to do the best they can. They may not have all the tools at hand, but there is somebody that can help you. So just telling them that you want to consolidate your loans. They know which ones can be consolidated, what can't be consolidated. They'll give you the new payment terms. And so even in my consolidation, I was on an income-based repayment plan. And a lot of people don't realize that you can use that too. So for a couple of years, while I was paying off that smaller loan with the large interest rate, my IBR payment for my public loan was 0. So I was still sending them money, even though my payment showed that it was 0. So it was showing that my loan was in good standing, even though every month it was saying I'm paying them nothing. But that helps a lot. So that income-based repayment plan and making sure that the loans you can consolidate all go together.
Okay. And so then once you had your consolidation in place, now you had to be super diligent when you started sending in the money, and you would call to verify and appropriate how the funds should be dispersed. So talk about that phone call, because you kept saying, like, I had to talk to a supervisor. So is it that sometimes the first person that picks up the phone isn't able to make it happen, and you have to be persistent? Talk about that process.
So I am definitely I want to talk to the manager person. I feel like the people who answer the phones, I can't yell at you. I literally cannot, because you have no power. Put me on the phone with somebody that I almost don't feel bad being upset with, because I know they can do a couple different things. And so sometimes just trying to explain what you need to a person who is not a supervisor is frustrating. I am not going to lie. There have been days where I was talking on the phone with somebody and I'm thinking, I don't want to fuss at you, because it's not your fault that things aren't right, but I want to talk to somebody who knows a little bit more, and just understanding that they may not have all of the knowledge, but they can give you to somebody who does. There have been times where I've left voicemails for supervisors. They've called me back. It can get done, and they will readily call you back and talk you through whatever issues you're having. You just have to be patient, because I'm sure there's people who yell and scream and don't get what they need.
Now, how are you tracking your progress, even these phone calls and these chunks of payments that you were sending? Was there a tracking system that you had to keep yourself on track during this journey?
So I use a couple. I have my composition notebook and everything is written down. I also tracked everything via an Excel spreadsheet, and I had a separate savings account just for money for student loans. So I could see what was going out, how frequently it was going out. And even on the Sallie Mae website, when you log into your account, you can see what payments are pending, what payments have gone through. I would calculate how much interest I would have to pay that month, and that would help me in deciding how much more I'd want to pay towards it. But yeah, their website does a great job of tracking it, but I like to make sure that I track it myself. So writing it down, putting it in an Excel spreadsheet, and just knowing where my money is going helps.
So since you had a consolidation and you were also being strategic with which ones were getting paid. So like on your Excel sheet, for example, is it one column? Like break down the columns, because somebody is probably listening like, man, I want to be diligent like her because it obviously worked for her. So like, what were the different columns and data that you were entering into the spreadsheet?
Okay, so I use my Excel spreadsheet for literally everything. So there's one big sheet, it has the months, and then it has everything that I spend money on. So there's student loan 1, student loan 2, student loan 3, all the way down to breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks. Everything that comes out goes into that Excel spreadsheet. So I could see this month I paid $2,000 towards student loan 1, $1,000 towards student loan 2, and made it easy for myself so I could see it. And then I also used from debt-free charts. Each student loan had a chart, and I would color the charts in every single month or every single time I made a payment, not even just monthly. I made a couple of payments every month. And so with that chart, I can look at it and see what I was doing. And so with the Excel sheet, I put how much money I'm bringing in every single month, what's going out every single month in every single category of my life, and then what's left over. So back then, what's left over went towards my student loans, be it $50 or $500. I'm using whatever money I have left over to pay that.
Talk about that mindset right there, because some people, they got like you 60,000, some people got 100,000, some people got 150,000 out of student loans, and they see that extra 50, they like, this not gonna make no impact. Talk about why it was important for you to send whatever you had extra to the payment, to the debt, I should say.
So that interest, like even the smallest little $50 payment helps knock out some of the interest. And so for me, getting that interest every month to zero was big. There was one month where I sent them like $3.47 because that's how much the interest was. And I wanted that to be gone. And so I'm just very particular about everything I do. And so it helped me get through it a lot faster. I'm not going to say it was easy because every single time I made a payment, something in my life was going wrong. I was like, I could use this money for something else, but I'm trying to be debt free.
Everyone knows why life insurance is important, but many of us choose to ignore the reality of what would happen if we were to die suddenly without proper protection. The results could be devastating for your surviving family members, leaving them with a large bill for your final expenses, or even worse, loss of the family home because they can no longer cover the mortgage.
Term life insurance gives you peace of mind at a price you can afford. Term life insurance allows you to meet your financial obligations today while still protecting your family's future tomorrow.
If you don't currently have a life insurance policy, you are not alone. According to Life Insurance Statistics and Facts, which is a report put out by the life insurance industry, about 43% of the population don't own a life insurance policy in any amount.
Wow. Buying life insurance doesn't have to be complicated. Legal & General America make it easy for you to protect your family's financial future.
As one of the nation's leaders in low-cost, high-quality life insurance to over 1.3 million families, they know how to protect you.
Legal & General America makes understanding and applying for life insurance easy. You can get a free quote by going to hisorhermoney.com/LGA. The links are also in the description box below.
So, and on your journey, you've talked about the fact that, you were underemployed, meaning you weren't making a fantastic salary in accordance with your training and your credentials and whatnot. And that's easy for some to use as an excuse of I'll start my journey when I make some more money, or I can't do this because I don't have any extra money. I don't have any wiggle room. So talk about your mindset, knowing that you're not necessarily making the type of salary that you should or could, but yet pushing forward and not saying I'll wait or I'll get to it someday.
Oh yeah. So one of my big things is I'm an avid reader, and The Richest Man in Babylon is one of my favorite books. It's very short, but it's so profound. And I always, always, always pay myself 10%. So at one point I was unemployed, and I set up to have $50 a month transferred from my checking to my savings. Doesn't sound like a lot, but for the last probably decade, there has been $50 a month automatically going from checking to savings. Half the time, I don't miss it. And then because of The Richest Man in Babylon, I put 10% aside for myself. I don't care what's going on. I don't care how much or how little I make. 10% is going into my own personal savings. And I'm forcing myself to live and pay bills off the other 90%. And it is hard. It is uncomfortable. It is not fun. But once I got into the habit of doing it, it was easier. And so now I'm at the point where I can essentially put away 50% of my income, even though I'm still not making what I should be making. I'm enjoying life, and I'm able to save as much as I want just because I did give myself that debt freedom. So starting off with that 10%, even if you are making $20, $30, $40, $50,000 and you have all this debt and all these expenses, that 10% does a lot. It was how I was able to have over $20,000 in my savings account for when things went bad. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but it helps and it adds up quickly.
I think that's one of the probably powerful points of your story is that it all counts. And it's about repetition and consistency at whatever level you're at. You don't have to wait for some big magical number that you feel is a level that will allow you to hit your savings goals, hit your debt freedom goals. Work with the level that you're on and build up that discipline muscle at that level. And then as things start to improve, you look up and like you said, I have $50,000 in my savings account, which is crazy. So now the journey to debt freedom often comes with obstacles. And you got hit with quite an obstacle when you're on vacation and they say, hey, don't come back. Nice knowing you. Take us to that moment. And how did you handle that wilderness, so to speak? Because you had all these financial goals that you were trying to achieve, and now your income is gone.
So I was at my family reunion. It was the last day. We were having the picnic and everything was great. And I got a phone call from an unsaved number. Don't answer those. I'm also in like Columbus, Mississippi. My phone just barely works. So I get a text message from this unsaved number, and it's like, oh, we don't need you to come back and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm sorry. So in the midst of all this happiness with my family, my life as I know it is completely falling apart. And so that drive back home was the longest drive because I didn't say anything. I was with my dad and one of my brothers, and I'm just sitting in the back seat soaking, trying to figure out what next. And I am a worrier. I am a grade A Olympic gold medalist worrier. And even though I have tens of thousands of dollars in my savings account and I live at home and my car is paid off, I don't know how I'm going to make it every single day. Like, that is the worry. And once I got back, I reached out to a really good friend of mine who's a lawyer, and I'm like, hey, let's talk. Talk to a few friends in HR about the things that had happened within this company and everything. They're like, look, you need to go to the EEOC. The EEOC was like, no, this doesn't sound like what you're saying it is, except 15 people in HR says it does, but okay. And so starting that lawsuit was hard on me because I felt bad, even though I'd had this terrible experience with this company and all this stuff was going on. I felt bad for them, and it was ugly. I am glad that I stuck it out because they offered me less than I had in my savings account to settle. And that was rough to know that this is what this company that I'd been with for 3.5 years thought I was worth. But we kept fighting. And so I was on unemployment for like 6 months, which is the limit in my state. And at the time, I'm just hustling. And that was another thing that I did. So outside of the money I got from the settlement, the money I got from my savings account, I hustle. I babysit, I do brand ambassador work, I do focus groups and surveys. I bake. At one point, I was not getting unemployment and there was nothing coming through because I feel like I'd been blackballed in this industry. And baking, I literally baked enough for a couple months to pay all of my bills. And not even just all of my bills, like I was out here living. If you didn't know that my income was only coming from things that I baked, you would have no idea. And so I definitely encourage people to use your gifts because I never thought people would be willing to buy like cookies and brownies and whatever I bake, but I was shipping stuff across the country.
All right, now you got to break that down. You can't just kind of skate on by that. Because people are always looking for ways to make extra money. You just said you were shipping cookies around the country. So, I mean, break down the tactics of how you were able to make this happen.
So oddly enough, I was in a group meet with a bunch of people from all over the country. And I think I was baking because I was bored. This is what happens when you don't have a job. You just start baking and doing stuff. And one of the guys was like, hey, well, can you send me some cookies? And I said, sure. If you pay for shipping, I'll just send you cookies. So I baked, shipped him some cookies. He calls me and is like, hey, you need to sell these. You need to sell them for this price and do this, and I'll buy them. And so all of our friends started buying them. And I would kind of promote a little bit on Facebook or Instagram just to my immediate circle. My cousins and friends, like I was shipping cookies from St. Louis to California, from St. Louis out to New York, just everywhere in between. And so they say your gift will make room for you. My gift kept me fed. It kept the lights on. I mean, I definitely use the resources, and then I do brand ambassador work. So I'm out here. I might be on my feet 10, 12 hours a day. But what people don't know is brand ambassador work pays well. So I'm making $25 an hour interacting with people. It's great. Focus groups, oh man. I think I got paid $350 for giving somebody my opinion. I can't make that for free. Like I give my opinion to people all the time and I don't get paid for it. But I'm in these focus groups, and depending on the company, they give you cash. They'll give you a Visa gift card. Some of the like Visa gift cards you get, you can go to the ATM and pull that cash off. So that right there is paying bills. It's making a student loan payment. It's making life easier. So I tell all my friends, get a side hustle. And then even babysitting. One of my friends needed somebody to watch her kids. She and her husband were both going on a trip. Their other babysitters were booked. She's like, hey, can you help? Sure, why not? I made more money babysitting than I do some days. And it's like, oh, this is profitable. So I definitely used all of my resources.
So when it comes to resources, when it comes to all these things that you just named, because I know you got everybody's attention, brand ambassadorships, the babysitting, and focus groups, are there like certain websites that you found to be good places to get leads for these different things?
So with brand ambassador work, I found my first job on Craigslist. Sounds crazy, but I did that for 4 months. It's like $25 an hour, 40 hours a week. There's so many different companies that you can look for, and depending on what market you're in, there's more work. So Chicago, LA, New York, Little Rock, Arkansas has a huge network for it. And so just Googling brand ambassador work, there's so many companies that'll come up. We Know Talent, Have a Street. What are some other companies that I've worked for? There's been so many that I've worked for over the years, but the work, they pay, depending on the company, they pay really quickly. Those are the ones that I like to do, the ones who pay within a week or 2 weeks. A lot of it is that W-2 work. And so it's easy. Depending on the market you're in, it's so easy to find brand ambassador work. Babysitting just happened. Even now, I have a friend whose other friend needed a babysitter. So she's like, hey, can I pay you to watch my kid from time to time? At this point, sure. Extra money goes to my savings. Focus groups, Focus Point Global, Schlesinger, Lucas Market Research are 3 that I work with as often as possible.
Wow, that's good stuff. I hope y'all were taking good notes because Kiara just hooked y'all right on up. Now, you went through a lot on this journey, from underemployment to unemployment to court battles. And that day came, though. Through it all, despite all that you had to overcome, you were able to make that very last debt payment. Plenty of people are tuned in, wondering what it's like to get to that point. So can you paint the picture of what it was like to make that final payment toward your debt?
Whew, I was so excited. I am completely broke. It was like building up these savings accounts all over again, but it felt good. I'm not gonna lie. That first 2 months, wild out. Now, I didn't spend more than I had, but I was like, oh, I can go buy this. I went to Tiffany & Company, and bought a bracelet. I got a necklace. And I was like, yo, I can afford this. So it still feels surreal. I am not going to lie. I logged into the Sallie Mae website a couple days ago and just looked at it again like, I don't owe anybody. And so I'm making it a point to treat myself at least once a month, because it's something I hadn't done before. I felt like, oh, I owe all this money. I can't do this. I can't do that. I'm not going to lie. Throughout this debt-free journey, I definitely traveled. I ate well. I had a lot of fun. So I am a testament. You can do both. Because I definitely, this time last year, I was in Belize, and then New Orleans the following week. So
talk about how you were able to do that, because a lot of people think that this means like no fun. I can't do anything. I can't buy anything. Everything is about the debt. So talk about your blended approach to still attacking your debt very vigorously, but also building in fun.
So I'm a planner by nature. My friends come to me because, one, I'm going to find a deal for anything. You need toilet paper? I got you. You need a dress for a special occasion? I got you. I will find a deal for anything. And a good friend of mine last year spotted a flight deal for Belize, MLK weekend, $330 round trip. The catch was on United, and there was no carry-on, so we could have a book bag. I took a 4-day trip, and all I had was a book bag. And we stayed in the Airbnb, and we went on adventures, and it was great. I love to travel. Love it, love it, love it. I may or may not have taken 7 trips last year. Just catch a flight deal, go stay with friends, hang out, have a good time, visit family, collect those points. I was paying for flights with my points on Southwest, and Delta took care of me a couple of times and made sure I had enough points to do what I needed to do. But I had to have a little bit of fun. So this year is more of a building year. And also, I joined a sorority a couple months ago. And expensive, but worth it. And so even with all of that, all of this paying my loans off, the investment that I made in myself and to join this organization was so worth it. Because some days I would think oh my gosh, I could use this money and can be done paying my debt faster. But I lived my lifelong dream of becoming a woman of Alpha Kappa Alpha, Sorority Incorporated. I got a chance to travel. I became debt free. And now I'm in that building mode. So this year is all about stacking cash.
Nice. So were you saying like a certain percent, like you talked earlier, that 10% was always going towards savings? So was a certain percent always toward debt, a certain percent toward vacation fund? How did you plan it out ahead of time?
So I have 3 savings accounts with Capital One. There's a sinking fund, there's my AKA fund, and there is my emergency fund. And so one of my goals last year, in 2018 actually, was to save about $6,000 for things that I wanted to do. So, and I'm telling y'all all my little business, but I got my eyebrows microbladed in 2019. So that was a nice investment. I was saving up to join the sorority. And so before I officially started like crushing my student loans, I had that money saved up. So that way it could collect interest in this little account while I'm paying down debt. And as I needed the money, I was able to pull from it. And then I used actually the rest of that money in that fund to pay off the remainder of my debt.
So how were you, because you got my attention, you was like, I went to Belize for $300. So like, how the heck do you find such deals?
So secret flying, the flight deal, different travel groups on Facebook, Google Flights. Honestly, just going to Google Flights and finding a weekend or a week that you want to take a trip and taking it based off of what flight's the cheapest. So say going to Dominican Republic on this 1 week is $500 as opposed to going to Miami, which is like $800. So you just take the cheaper trip and keep it moving. My friends flew to Paris for $400.
Say what?
Yes, round trip. And so I live in St. Louis. Chicago is the biggest airport within 4 hours. And so they drove up to Chicago, took a flight to Paris, spent a week there. Now, when I went to Paris, my flight was $1,200. But you can catch a deal. And I was in Paris for 8 days, 7 nights. So it's doable. There's so many websites that are out there where you can travel. I want to go to Jamaica. So my goal is to find a reasonable flight and then pick a resort. And I'm also that girl where when I go on a nice trip, I'm getting my own room. So there's resorts that you can sign up to be a part of their mailing list and you'll get discount codes and all this other stuff. So, hey, friends, y'all can share a room while we're on vacation. I am not.
Man, love it. Love it. It's all about living. It's okay to have both. You can hammer your debt and you can also build in fun. So I think that your story is a great example of that. So what's next? What are your new goals? You said this is a building year. So what's next?
So I have a goal of saving $15,000. No matter what it is I make this year, my goal is $15K. So $5,000 for emergencies, $5,000 for sinking funds, $5,000 for AKA. So my sinking funds are my car insurance, any maintenance I need on my car, glasses. I get those every single year. Anything that I know that happens every single year, that'll come out of my sinking fund. So at the end of the year, it may not have that $5,000 total, but all of my bills will be paid. So making sure that I stack that money and then try to have a little bit of fun. So I've got to take a flight on Delta within the next couple months because I have a flight credit that's going to expire. So who knows where I'll go, somewhere. But it's definitely a year of building. I've got a conference, AKA conference, our regional conference. I've got Boulé. And so making sure that I have as much fun as possible, but not spending all my money.
Awesome. So if people want to keep up with you on your journey, how do they find you on the interwebs?
I have an Instagram page that I run, Miss Untangled Web. And it's definitely a play on my last name and my personal Instagram page. So Miss Untangled Web is filled with jokes. It is filled with little tips on how to become debt-free and bits and pieces of my journey. So I've kind of taken a little bit of a break from posting personal things on Miss Untangled Web, but I'll be back soon, especially with my big goals that I have this year.
Awesome. This has been an incredible story that you shared with us, man. Congratulations on your debt freedom and all the things that you're getting ready to accomplish. And thank you for coming and sharing this with our audience today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.